Welcome to the Life Stuff 101 podcast, dedicated to sharing stories and insights to inspire you to always make your mental and emotional wellness a top priority. We talk to people who share their personal journeys and experiences, as well as to people who share their professional expertise. And there'll also be other times when we share personal tips and stories, which will hopefully somehow spark that aha moment for you too. Because we all have those moments when we think, I wish I had known that earlier in life. That's what Life Stuff 101 is all about. Our discussion today is for general information purposes and not meant to be specific advice. For personalized support and specific answers to questions you may have, please consult the appropriate medical or mental health care professional. Now here's your host who's on this wild adventure ride of life just like you. And yes, a real life person who's actually slipped on a banana peel along the way. Mental wellness coach and psychotherapist, Mio Yokoi.
Hello and welcome to another episode of Life Stuff 101. My name is Mio Yokoi. I work as a registered psychotherapist in Toronto, Canada, and also as a coach and supporter to striving, highly sensitive folks everywhere. During this time of the COVID-19 crisis, I believe that it's more important than ever to consider the need for us to be taking care of our mental health. And to hopefully help with that, I'm also publishing a series of mini episodes called The Challenging Times Self-Care Challenge. And if you think it might be helpful for you to get some self-care prompts during these challenging times, each mini episode is roughly 10 minutes in length. And you can get access to each of the episodes at lifestuff101.com/challenge. And also, I was so happy to have another conversation with Debbie Brady, who is my guest today. She's a mental health advocate and author of the Depression Survival Guide. Her blog is also a great resource, and it can be found at endingstigmatogether.com. Debbie and I first spoke on episode 22, which was also packed full of valuable information about depression, and I would recommend going back and listening to that episode as well. Debbie and I already had this conversation scheduled before the current situation with COVID-19 had impacted the majority of the world. But once we were recording, we decided to focus our conversation on how to think about and manage depression during a time of crisis. Mental health is something that is going to be a focus of our collective overall well-being during and after this global crisis. And I hope that my conversation with Debbie will help to shed light on what to look for if you're wondering about depression and ways to take care of yourself during this time of crisis. Again, I'm so glad to have had the chance to reconnect with her, and please enjoy my conversation with Debbie Brady. It was 2 weeks, so 14 days, right? That was sort of the idea of it. I felt like in the back of my mind, I'm like, this doesn't feel like it's going to be a couple of weeks, but I was maybe thinking a month plus a little bit, maybe. All the public gatherings and things like that they've been canceled until the end of June. And July 1st is Canada Day, but clearly no one's thinking that we're going to have parades and like mass gatherings too.
Yeah, right. Because July 4th is our big, Independence Day, and that's always a big parade. And I'm from Philadelphia originally, which is where our nation was founded, and it's a big deal in Philadelphia. I mean, hundreds of thousands of people come to the 4th of July. It's a week-long thing, but I don't see that happening this year.
Yeah, I had the privilege of being in Connecticut or Massachusetts. I can't remember.
Probably Massachusetts.
Yeah.
If it has to do with American history, it's probably Massachusetts.
July 4th, like a few years ago. And I was, first of all, like blown away by the positivity and the patriotism. And I was actually thinking about that too for you guys, because it is, if Canada Day is what it is here, it felt way more amplified there in the States. And it's so true. Like like whether it's like the sporting events or whether it's holidays when people get together or people celebrate together, what is that going to look like for the next little while?
Right. Yeah. They're saying, really until we can get the vaccine, we'll have to have some limitations, maybe not stay at home for 12 to 18 months, but some life's going to be altered a bit is what I heard them saying today. And that's a hard thing for a lot of us who live in free countries like Canada, the United States, not in these dictatorships. It's a hard thing for us to be like, wait, we can't do whatever we want. Like, I mean, yeah, we have to follow laws and rules, but we're used to having the freedom to moving wherever we want in the United States. And in Canada, you can go to whatever province you want. We have that freedom. And now all of a sudden it's like, no, you can't go to the annual baseball game you go to every July 4th. You can't do that, So I think it's going to be definitely some changes ahead for everybody.
Yeah, a lot of questions. And on one hand, there is these larger questions about like what are our lives going to look like in terms of these sort of like larger gatherings or the things that we know how to celebrate or do on a regular basis. But then there's also how we've been adjusting to our everyday lives. And I think before I hit record, you were saying like the first 2 weeks, it's like, okay, this is, like we don't necessarily want to maybe find a new normal here or a new kind of a routine. We're just doing this thing for this period of time and then maybe we could just get back to normal. But clearly it's not going to, this, whatever this new normal is now, it did extend past those 2 weeks.
Yeah. And I think it's important at this point to kind of start finding your new normal, your new routine. Because like one thing I always talk about with depression is how important a routine can be. I have a morning routine and I have certain things I have to do to manage my depression. So when that gets thrown off, you kind of have like, well, for 2 weeks over like Christmas break, sometimes the kids have about 2 weeks off. You don't really come up with like a whole new routine. You just kind of adjust and roll with it, make it like a vacation. And that's kind of how the first 2 weeks kind of felt for me. But now it's like, oh, wait, I got to learn how to function in what this is now. And I think it's just important to figure out what your new normal is going to be for a while so you can keep yourself motivated and healthy and productive. Otherwise, we're just going to binge on Netflix and eat junk food. We got to start moving past that. So
right. No, it's so true. And one of the things that I've been thinking about in relation to what's happening is that a lot of people, I think there are many people who may not identify with the idea of having a mental health issue or mental health difficulties, right? And there's a couple of things. Like firstly, one of the things that I have learned through doing this podcast is to talk or to figure out a more like a clearer way for me to be able to talk about like what it is that I'm trying to achieve with this podcast. And the big piece is around the fact that people think about physical health and illness, right, in two different ways. And yet somehow mental health and mental illness are often sort of like lumped together, as like, but we clearly, like all of us have an idea that health is an important thing, right? Like it's important to take care of our physical health. But somehow when it comes to mental health, people will say it's like, oh no, I don't have mental health, or I don't, have mental health problems maybe. But we all have the need to take care of ourselves mentally and emotionally.
Right.
So I would like, if anything, like for this podcast to be a small voice at the very least to talk about the fact that mental health is a thing, first of all, and that if we take care of our mental health, then we might be better equipped to deal with mental health difficulties or mental illness, should that happen.
I was going to say, that's why it's so important to like be prepared, and it needs to be an ongoing, like with your physical health, it's ongoing. You don't just decide, oh, I don't want to get sick, I'll just take these vitamins today. It's a daily thing to keep ourselves healthy. And I think one of the struggles people have is because we refer to it as mental health, and mental is a more abstract word, where if you're talking about anything else, it's heart disease, it's kidney disease, like we list the organ, oh, it's liver cancer, whatever. We list the organ where the illness is. It's a sinus infection in your sinuses. Instead of saying, oh, it's a brain health, we have to take care of our brain. And I think if we, start focusing more on what we need to do to keep our brain healthy, that people won't see it or won't feel as, oh, well, I'm mentally ill. Well, no, are you are you ill because you have diabetes? It's not your fault that you get type 1 diabetes as a kid. And it really should be no different with the brain.
Hmm. And I do think that in some ways that conversation is becoming more and more prominent now, like for us to be
Hmm.
talking about the need for us to take care of our brains and to keep our brains and our mental health healthy. But I think based on what's going on right now, that people who might have previously felt as though they didn't have
Mm.
any mental health difficulties may be finding that they're feeling
Yeah.
a bunch of stuff that they might not even understand what they're feeling.
Oh, of
And
course.
yeah, and I was thinking that our conversation today is really important because maybe we can speak to or give people an idea of why they may be feeling what they're feeling, and the fact that it makes sense that if they're having some difficulties right now, that that based on everything that's going on, that they may be feeling some level of depression.
Yeah, oh yeah. I mean, just so much unknown right now.
And so our discussion today, or like the fact that we were going to connect, was in the works before all this crisis stuff started
Right.
happening here in North America. But I am really glad for us to be connecting so that we can talk specifically about depression in a time of crisis.
Hmm.
And as I mentioned, there are many people who maybe not consider themselves to be impacted by mental health concerns, and there may be a lot of people really struggling to understand what's internally going on. So I was wondering if you could maybe talk about how you would describe depression.
Yeah, I mean, I think that a lot of people think of depression as being sad. But like everybody gets sad, right? Everybody, that's an emotion. Everybody has that feeling at some point. Depression, when it is kind of like when sadness kind of crosses over and it actually becomes like an illness. So, I mean, so depression is more of an illness, and it kind of hangs on a little too long. You may be sad for a day or two over something, but depression really starts to affect every aspect of your life, right? So it's going to affect you even physically. You're going to feel, I always describe it when I'm depressed, and I've talked to a lot of people who feel this way. You feel kind of weighted down, almost like you have one of those x-ray vests they use at the dentist to take an
Mm.
x-ray, the weighted vest. You just feel like you're kind of carrying some extra weight, and it doesn't go away. You usually need to either seek some help or see a doctor like you would if you had the flu or a virus. If it wasn't getting better, you'd go to the doctor. Um, Depression, you can feel this is what I worry about now, is when you're depressed, you sort of want to isolate, but this isolation's kind of been forced on a lot of us. And I think there's a lot of people who are home now who aren't used to being home and are may struggling with this isolation,
Mhm.
and not sure what to do with those feelings of isolation. And depression, you're going to lose all your willingness to do anything fun. Like you're going to lose anything that you like to do, any hobbies, you're just not going to want to even do them. So it's just a total loss of all interest and just feeling it's, I always say it's almost like sadness on steroids. Like you're
Mm.
just so far beyond your typical sadness. So,
Mhm. Yeah,
but,
there's
and
sadness.
yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, I was just gonna say there's sadness, and then what you were saying is that it's an amplified sadness that's also
Hmm.
prolonged.
Yeah. I mean, it's like kind of like, if you have a runny nose, you may not really have a cold. It may just run for an hour and then it passes, but you're not going to say you're sick. But if it continues for a week, all of a sudden you're gonna be like, oh, I'm sick and I can't do this, and you start feeling worse, and more parts of your body are affected. It's kind of like sadness. Oh, you're sad from this movie. You get up the next day, you're fine. But if worse, you lost your job for this, or you can't see the friends, or there's a lot of people who are in maybe bad marriages, or kids who are home from school and school was their haven. So we've just got to kind of have a lot of emotions I think people aren't sure what to do with because we've never been through anything like this before, you
Yeah.
know?
Yeah, absolutely. And so there are people who may have like built their lives in the ways that they have, and
Right.
they know how to manage themselves in their ways, and maybe they haven't really thought about how they're feeling.
Yeah. And because
Yeah.
this is new, and maybe they work a lot and they're busy, and all of a sudden everything kind of comes to a halt. And there are a lot of people who keep busy so they don't have to feel, or and they don't have to think about their emotions. And now there's more time for all of that.
So what's your sense of some of the other things that might be happening for people? You mentioned a few things there. The fact that we're self-isolating or sheltering in place or being at home means that there might be more time. There might be more interactions with people that even though we might live under the same roof, it's not that we're together with them 24/7, generally speaking. So those kinds of things might also have an impact. What other things can you think of that might also be impacting people during
Well,
this
I
time?
think even just the fact where we do live in a society where there's a lot of two parents who work full time. So now you have a lot of parents who are home trying to still work full time from home, but their three kids are now home all day, and they're second grade, fourth grade, and sixth grade or whatever. Still need kind of help. So you're homeschooling, helping your kids get their school done, and you're trying to juggle work. So I think there's going to be a lot of parents out there feeling like they're not doing a good enough job, and I think that could really play a role in the mother or father's mental health too, trying to juggle all that. I think just even taking away just the freedom to come and go. We're used to being able to just go to the store, go out to dinner, and for a lot of people, that's a regular part of their routine and their mental health. Can't go to the gyms. The gyms are closed. So for somebody like me who exercise is a key to keeping my mental health good, I think that is for a lot of people. So now you have to find a different way to get exercise in. So I think even there's a tendency to, watch Netflix or Prime or whatever, stream something on your TV and eat junk food when you're sitting on the sofa. That's going to take its toll. So we need to make sure we're eating healthy during this time too, but it's going to be so easy to not. Because we're off our routine too. We usually, during the workday, you eat this for breakfast and you take this for lunch and then you have dinner. And now all of a sudden you're home and you have access to the food 24/7. So I think it's just adjusting to all the newness all at once.
Yes.
And not by our choice. It's not like, we decided to pull our kids out of school and have them learn on the computer or homeschool. It's not like we decided we wanted to work at home. Some people enjoy going to an office. So I think the lack of having it be a choice for a group of people who are used to having a lot of free choice, I think that's been very hard for a lot of us to kind of accept. And if you're not used to having to worry about your mental health, and if you never really experienced depression, then take stock of what you're feeling, slow down and feel it, and see what you need to maybe adjust.
And you were just talking about choice, and I was just thinking about how and you talked about this is having to transition to changes, and for them to happen so rapidly and so many all at once. That in itself is going to be exhausting.
Yep.
Just holistically, like just being able to get your head around it, and then to figure out like how that's gonna actually practically look like and all that kind of stuff. And one of the things that as a mental health care provider, I talk about when just people taking care of themselves, again, like holistically, like one of the things is get outside, go for a walk, go for a run, or meet up with friends, and all of those things that I would count on myself, but I would also suggest as ways of, one of the ways of managing self-care aren't available anymore, or they're certainly a lot harder. Just even getting outside the door is stressful.
Yeah, you have to kind of adjust. And a couple things I've been talking to, my readers on my blog is, still, if you can, get outside, even if it's in your backyard. Like if it's sunny out, get outside and get some of that vitamin D. Get some of that sun, feel the fresh air on your face. Maybe you can't take a walk at your favorite park, but you can stand outside and breathe in that fresh air. It's just so important to kind of figure out different ways to do the self-care, because we still need to do it. I know a lot of people who said, oh, I haven't showered in 3 days. Shower every day. Get in that shower. You don't have to do your hair. Just get showered so you're clean and you'll feel better. Find ways to stream some exercise at home. But it's like you said, it was so much at once, but we have to figure out some kind of self-care still that we can do that will still help us feel better.
For sure. And for those people who might not necessarily be connected to just there may be their feelings, and they're noticing that there is this level of feeling down and maybe like a deeper grade of sad, and it's been continuing now for some time. Apart from those kinds of symptoms, what other symptoms might somebody look out for in terms of whether they could maybe know that they're depressed or not?
It's I was thinking about like how we isolate, where I don't mind being home. I'm a bit of a homebody, but about last weekend, a group of my college friends were doing an online Zoom happy hour. And part of me that day was struggling. I'm like, oh, I don't feel like even hopping on to Zoom. But I forced myself to do that, right? So I think that isolation, if you feel like you're isolating to the point where you don't even want to get on a video chat with some of your closest friends, like I made myself do that because I'm like, no, I'm going to slip into a great abyss. Like, so if you start feeling like you're isolating yourself, even from texting your friends or calling the people who you usually talk to or getting on a video chat, if you feel like you don't even want to do that, then that isolating amongst the isolation, does that make sense? Like,
yeah, absolutely.
Isolating yourself even more, that to me would be a red flag if these are people that you do normally would want to go out and see. So that was kind of a wake-up call for me. I'm like, okay, I got to do some more self-care if I don't feel like hopping on this Zoom with these people who are like my sisters, so that I would watch out for that. If you start to feel, if you've really never been depressed, and maybe you lost your job and you're not sure about an income, and you start feeling like you want to die, you need to call a hotline or call your ER, or do something, so you don't ever want to get to that point. If you ever start feeling so hopeless that you'd rather wish you were dead, you need to talk to somebody right away. Sleep disruptions. Are you staying up really late? That was part of my problem in the beginning too. All of a sudden I wasn't getting up at 5:45 to get my son to school. And next thing I know, I was watching Netflix to 1 p.m. or 1 a.m. Like 2 a.m. or doing a jigsaw puzzle. One night I was up till almost 4 doing this jigsaw puzzle. Like, no, keep your sleep. But if your sleep's being interrupted or you're sleeping too much, are you sleeping 15 hours a day versus 8? So, watch for your sleep patterns too.
No, that's really great. What suggestions would you have for people who are experiencing those symptoms of depression right now?
I would do some of your own research if it's just starting. It's just been a few days. Get online and get educated about depression, about the symptoms, and about some of the techniques people use to help themselves work through it. See what you can kind of do at home. But if you feel depressed for about a week or so, then I think that's when you need to reach out to your doctor. If you have a doctor you go to, just a regular medical doctor. I just get my antidepressants from my regular medical doctor because that's what my insurance pays for. But, call them and just express to them what you're feeling. They're doing, I know a lot of doctors are doing the telemed appointments, so you don't even have to go in. And then you can look into, if you feel like you need to talk to a therapist, I would look to some of these teletherapy programs they have now. There's a lot of them now, and I know that you can usually get in a little faster as a new patient than trying to connect with somebody you've never met. But you want to make sure if you do feel you're feeling depressed and you're not able to kind of push through it on your own, reach out for help. There's no shame in it.
Right. And I just actually did want to add to what you were saying about feeling hopeless. That is
Hmm.
one of the symptoms, that it is important, especially if there is a hopelessness, that if somebody is feeling, that they do reach out. And even though right now it can feel as though the health and the medical health system may seem taxed, that there are other kinds of services, like there are specific mental health services, whether
Hmm.
it is hotlines, and there are different ones in different areas, and or there are either these telehealth services where you could be connected with a counselor or a therapist on these online platforms, or a lot of private practitioners now have moved their practices online as
Hmm.
well. So, based on the jurisdiction that you're in, there are certain things to keep in mind, but there are ways of being able to get connected with somebody that you can speak to. So it's hard, I think, when someone's feeling depressed, to do some of that legwork sometimes. But even if just doing a Google of like online therapy, you will get some options for you to be able to maybe consider.
Yeah, I mean, in this day and age, the technology makes our resources so much more available, even with so much being shut down. And even, a lot of times, if you don't want to go to an ER right now, if you're feeling not safe, you can call like a local psychiatric hospital. Sometimes they take emergency evals, but you don't have to be alone. There's help out there that you can access from home, which is great because 15 years ago we wouldn't have had all this. Um, so I've been trying to look at the positives a lot to help keep my mental health, my depression up. Like, what are the positives? Like 15 years ago or 20 years ago, we had this pandemic. Not every home had the internet, right? We didn't have video conference and FaceTime and Zoom and all these other technologies that's helping us stay connected with our loved ones.
Mm-hmm.
Um, so I kind of try to spin it that way, that we're kind of blessed that it happened now. And I think about the Spanish flu in 1918. Like, they didn't even have TV. Like, what did they
Yeah.
do? they were,
Mm-hmm.
and they were home. What did they do with their free time? So I think in a lot of ways, I try to see what are the positives. But I know there's a lot of people who have lost their jobs, and that's super hard. So I think that's where you might be feeling hopeless. But you can even sometimes get sliding scales for therapy, or just because you don't have a job, don't not look for help. You know.
Mm-hmm. And there are different levels of intensity that people may be feeling in relation to depression,
Mm-hmm.
and there is, like we've just been talking about, professional help that's definitely out there. But then it's, I think, also important to know who the trusted people in your life are, because not necessarily everyone is that trusted those trusted people. But if you do know who those trusted people are, who you know that you can rely on to be able to support you during an emotionally difficult time, that might also be an option.
Yeah, and I always tell people, know who your tribe is. I put that in my survival guide. They can get on my website free. Like, who's your tribe, and who do you know that you can call, text, or whatever at 3 in the morning? Who can you call at 3 in the morning who will pick up that phone and talk to you? Like, that's who your tribe is. Um, and some people don't have a tribe, and I encourage them to kind of try to build one, even if it's on social media. I'm in a
Mhm.
few groups, mental health groups, and you can sometimes find some online support, but you need to know who those people are at all times. Even if you've never had any mental health issues, you should still know who those people are in case you had something else come up. Like, that's so important to know. So write those people down and have those numbers and know who they are, so you don't have to think about it when you need them. You just
Mhm.
know that that's who you call.
And I'm really glad too that you mentioned that everybody would have like immediate people around them that maybe they can trust in that way.
Hmm.
But that there are online forums, there are so many groups. They could even be Facebook groups, but also social media too. And I think that it is really great to know who it is, who your tribe is. And it doesn't have to necessarily be just somebody that you know in person, but there are other kinds of supports and other groups, and individuals out there that may be able to relate. And again, like that can be those supports for you.
Yeah, I mean, I'm in a couple different groups, and this one group is a woman who was going through something similar with one of her children that I had gone through with one of mine. And I have never met her, but she literally like private messaged me. She's like, can we talk on the phone? And I did. And we talked for an hour and I helped walk her through and, gave her some ideas, because that's what we need to do in society is we need to help others through their hard times if we've been through it already. So that's what I think you can find a lot of these this is on a Facebook group, but people, I think, underestimate the power of the social media. It can be, yeah, sure, there's some bad things that can happen on social media, but there are also some amazing things that happen on social media and really almost life-saving. I have seen lives being saved on some of these social media groups with people who just needed somebody who understood. Even if you have a tribe who would take you to the doctor for your appendix or something, not everybody has people who understand depression or mental illness. So sometimes you just need to open up your circle a little bit to find those people.
Just to stay on this idea of online groups for a moment, because it's just like anything else, right? Because there are some online groups that are just like full of caring and kindness and support, but then there are also other groups that don't necessarily have that kind of feeling or that sort of tone or within that group, within those kinds of groups. Do you have any suggestions as to be able to, I guess my question is more about how somebody may be able to decide whether a space is safe for them or not?
Well, I have searched groups for different things, and then if it looks like something I'm looking for, I'll request to join. But then once I join, I don't ever post anything right away about myself. I stalk it, right? So linger a little bit, linger for a week or two, kind of linger and see how people are, what they're posting, see how people are responding to that person. I've left groups because they've gotten nasty. I left a local group here for vegans, and because they were just nasty, I'm like, this is not what I was looking for. So if it's more of a negative environment, just leave. You don't have to explain yourself. They're not even going to know you left, right? But so kind of stalk it a little bit and linger and see the responses, and maybe pop a little response here or there and see how they respond to your response. That's what I suggest you do first to get the feel of the group. Kind of like if you go into, if you went to a group therapy, or if you go to a new job, you don't just share your life to the first person you meet at a new job. You kind of feel out your coworkers first before you decide whether or not you even want to share anything, so it's the same kind of thing. Just linger a little bit and watch how they react and see if it's the environment you were looking for.
Yeah, test the waters, and
Right.
not necessarily to assume that if it is, for instance, a group that is dedicated to mental health support or something like that, or it might be a group of folks who will talk about depression or other potential like mood issues and things like that, that just because it has a certain topic doesn't necessarily mean it's going to be a safe space.
Right.
So I really like that advice to, if the group looks like something that might be helpful for you to get in there, and I think with Facebook groups that it's better if it is private, that it is something that you join, and that it isn't going to be something just publicly accessible, especially when it comes to things around mental health, for instance.
Yeah, exactly. And I'm thinking of making a private group for my group too. But I've been looking at different groups, and one thing I've noticed about the groups I like most is they have rules. So when you join, before you can send the request, you have to agree to these rules. And I have found the ones that don't have the rules listed seem to be where anything goes. So you want to look for groups that kind of have rules from the administrator, and that it says, if you're nasty, we will dismiss you from the group. So I've noticed that being a pretty good guide to find groups that have those, rules of kindness. And if you don't follow these rules, we'll just remove you from the group. So look for that too when you're joining groups.
That's a really, really good point. Yeah, because so something is a free for all, generally speaking, it's just almost too uncontained, and that's where people could maybe,
Right.
not follow the rules. And if there are rules and they're enforced, it's usually a good container or like a safer container to be in.
Yeah, because if it's not a safe place, they're just gonna get rid of you. So, which is their right to do because it's their group. So, you want to make sure there's that administrator that's engaged in the group.
Yeah. And so thank you for allowing us to go down a little bit of a path there around groups, because I think that it is even for those folks who do have their tribe, who are maybe their immediate circle of people, like family, friends, and so forth, that I think that even online groups can be helpful to have, and especially when it might be that at any given time, like it might be like really early in the morning, and it's just feeling bad, but maybe not to the point where there's a hopelessness, or there's maybe just a sense of like, I just want to connect with somebody, to have a group.
Mm-hmm.
And to have a trusted group or a group that feels safe is maybe just another kind of tool in the toolkit.
Yeah, and I think one of the bad things about social media is that it's international, but one of the great things about social media is it's international. So when you're in some of these groups, maybe it's 6 a.m. here in Orlando, but it's noon over in Europe. So maybe there's somebody over there who's on, So just because it's so early here, you might be able to pop in. I have another group that people are all over the country and in Canada. So where it's 10 p.m. over there on the West Coast, it may be 1 a.m. here. Maybe I need something and they're still up. So there's some benefits to that too, is that just kind of spreads.
Yeah. And you never know too who are just up just like you, right? It is great that it's international and that there's always maybe people popping in and out of these groups or these kinds of forums. But I think at the same time too, especially now, you talked about this earlier about sleep, that many people are maybe staying up later or having some difficulty sleeping, and these groups are really great, just to maybe pop in, especially if you're having difficulty sleeping, and if it is a safe place for you, just to maybe able to talk about what it is that maybe that's on your mind, and there may be somebody there that can support you through it.
Yeah, just a back and forth for a few minutes, and you don't feel so alone, and you're calmed down and you can get to sleep. So
Right.
I'm all for it.
Yeah. So in addition to those things that we just talked about, what are also some specific steps for someone who can use that's actionable right now if they're feeling a level of depression or they're feeling depressed?
So I always like to make sure people are doing their self-care. Make sure you're taking care of yourself. That we can always do that, right? We can take a shower. It sounds so simple, but one of the first things to go with a lot of people with depression is just personal hygiene. So make sure you're getting that shower. Go out for a walk. We're allowed to go for walks most places, even if it's around your house a couple times. So get that self-care. Come up with a plan. Who are you going to call if you really need to talk? Make sure you know who those people are. I think people need to limit their daily intake of the news. Like somebody made a suggestion the other day to me, like, you don't even have to watch the news to get an update. Just text a friend and say, have there been any changes to the regulations? Because we can listen to the news 24/7. And if you do that, it can really get to you. So, see, I would get outside. I said earlier, get some fresh air. I think that's important. Eat healthy. You're home. Maybe have more time to cook some meals. Try to eat healthy. It affects our mental health, our nutrition so much. And this is such a tempting time. I mean, we just had Easter, so it's, chocolate and everything, but it's a tempting time to sit home and eat junk. So everybody's baking. I see all my friends baking cakes and cookies. And, it's kind of like what we do with snow days, right? You bake when it snows, except this is 1 month long of a snow day. So you want to make sure you're not intaking too much sugar, So those are a few things that I think everybody can do. And connect with your friends, connect with your family. I've been having phone calls with people I haven't talked to on the phone in forever because all we do is text now. Pick up the phone. People have time to talk. Like I said, I had a Zoom happy hour with 12 college friends, my closest college friends. We had a blast. We were on for 3 hours talking.
Wow.
You know, it was so much fun. And that was the one I didn't want to get on because I was so depressed. I wasn't depressed after that. I felt good for days. So, you know, FaceTime someone. We have so many different ways to connect video chat, you know, across the country for free. Do it. Set it up with a friend you haven't talked to in a while. You know, people have the time. We're not running our kids to activities. We're not, you know, getting stuck in traffic on the commute home. So reach out, you know, see another face that's not your family that you're maybe stuck home with lovingly. I say that lovingly,
Yes.
but you know, you might want to see another face or two, you know? So those are some tips I think that everybody can do right now that are free and pretty easy to implement.
Yeah. The thing that I actually was thinking about recently is that one of the things I really, really miss is being able to walk to work, because that was one of the ways in which I made sure that I got movement into my day.
Yeah,
And so, but you know, that at least I would, and would end up being my 10,000 steps. Like from here to work and back would be my 10,000 steps. And now that's been reduced dramatically. And
yeah,
but even with that, like even during sort of like regular life, like quote unquote regular life, I probably sat too much. And
hmm
I'm finding now that I have to really be conscious and intentional about getting up, because if I don't pay attention to it, I could just be sitting for very long periods of time. And I think that that is also something to keep in mind, that like getting outside is great, and that's something like thankfully, like fingers crossed, it's something that, you know, we are still able to do, right?
right.
But at the same time, sometimes like getting out in and of itself could be kind of stressful, and getting back in and then feeling like, okay, like, you know, what do I need to do to make sure that I'm coming
Right.
in, and being intentional about doing that and all that kind of stuff. But just sitting, because I think that we can, you know, just based on what's going on right now, that many of us might find ourselves just sitting.
Yeah, you're right. I definitely am sitting more because, you know, I do take my son to school and pick him up, you know, just even that. Like I don't even have to leave the house for days now. Um, so you're right. We do have to be intentional about even just getting up and walking around your apartment, wherever you live, you know.
Hmm.
Get up and don't ask somebody to bring you something to drink. Get up and get it
Right.
yourself. And, you know, maybe turn the TV on from the TV. Get up, you know. So, yeah, that's true. It's going to be easy to just sit on the sofa or sit at your desk or wherever.
Yeah, and then these are really, I think, great things to talk about in terms of self-care. And I think that in some ways, self-care has kind of become a buzzword, I guess, of sorts. You know, like we
hmm
talk about the need for self-care. How do you talk about or think about um, self-care if like somebody is maybe listening and going, it's like, yeah, well, what does that mean?
To me, self care is like beyond what you would do on a normal day. Okay. So, like, if you're going to work on a normal day, you're going to get up, take a shower, do your hair, you're going to maybe eat healthy. Where self care is kind of like extra. Like, maybe I give myself like a spa night at home. You know, I'll put on one of my masks and maybe soak my feet, give myself, you know, a little home pedicure or something, like doing a little something extra. It can be, you know, maybe you like smoothies from this one place, but you're not going to do it every day. So maybe you're going to get a protein smoothie, you know, a little something extra for yourself beyond the rat race of everyday life. You got to slow down. Even if you slow down and take 15 minutes in the morning to meditate or do some yoga, like anything that's going to help you physically or mentally, that you have to carve out that time for. It's not just in your daily routine unless you make it in your routine, you know, just like a little something extra that you don't have to do to get through the day, but you're going to do it because it's important to your health. I
Hmm.
think that's how
Yeah,
I would describe it.
yeah, something intentional, I think too.
Yes. That's the good word, intentional. Yeah, that's the word
Yeah.
I was missing.
Yeah, because even the idea of a routine, like routine, having a good routine in place, could be self-care. Because sometimes we can
Yes.
think about routine as like, oh, I get up in the morning and I get in the shower, I brush my teeth and all this kind of stuff. But thinking about like intentionality, like to build in meditation or maybe some exercise or some movement, or just having something that's more set and intentional, it is extra, right?
Hmm.
Over and above something that you might just do because you quote unquote have to do it. But to be able to have these things in place, it's almost like mental and emotional nourishment of sorts.
Right. You gotta have to build that, like journaling. You know, I started journaling again. Um, that's, I can go through my day without doing it, but on the mornings that I take that 5 minutes to start my day and give myself some gratefulness, I always write 3 things I'm grateful for, and that makes a difference. But I can skip it and still have a good day. But when I do it, it's just even better. When I exercise, it's even better. Yeah, I can get through my day successfully without exercising, but it's just so much better when I do intentionally make that time. So
Yeah.
I think that intentional is so right. So,
Hmm. And doing those things, it's not just for the sake of doing them, is because there is a shift. There is
mhm.
a mental shift, and even with exercise, for instance, there's way more because you're also engaging the rest of yourself in doing it.
Right.
That there are hormones that are being released, and it helps shift your state from maybe one place to another, and especially when there is an experience of depression or in depression, just to be able to figure out, and it's not always 100% reliable and successful in terms of being able to get yourself out of a depressed state, but you can maybe even have it shift a little bit. And with
Yeah, and then there's studies that prove that it does help. With it can help with depression, but like you said, even if it just shifts it a little bit, then you can do a little bit more the next day. And some days if I don't feel like exercising, even just like some days if I am depressed, I don't even have the energy to walk like a quarter mile. I really may not have it. I try to at least stretch, like do some just mild yoga stretches or something just to move my body at all. And I even see a difference with that. I'm not even like getting my endorphins really going. Just that movement can really help us when we're feeling like not moving.
Yeah. And another great resource is your book, of course, Depression Survival Guide. And I'm just so based on what you've laid out in your book, what are some ways in which it can be applied to those struggling in today's current crisis situation, do you think?
Well, I think whether they've struggled with depression or not, they could go to my website, which endingstigmatogether.com, and they can download the template for the survival guide that goes with the book, and they can maybe jot down some of those ideas for themselves. Maybe they've never sat down and thought about what helps their mood.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe they've kind of have been blessed and gotten through life being relatively upbeat and not really struggling with these emotions before, but if they can kind of sit down and sort through what helps them feel better and what foods help them feel good and what exercises and who's in their tribe, just sit down and kind of write that out. I just think it's important for everybody to have some type of a plan. So, because chances are at some point in your life, whether it's a situational depression, the loss of a loved one, or you develop chronic depression in your life at some point, it's good to have that ready because chances are something in your life is going to rock your world. And if you've never really intentionally done self-care or intentionally helped yourself with your mental health, then you won't really know what to do and you could spin out faster. Just think it's good to be prepared in life. So I would recommend that they kind of start there and then just come up with an idea and a plan of attack for their own life.
That's such an important thing to point out because I think many people, when they find themselves, maybe they never really thought about their mental health or the mental health needs before, and then they find themselves like inevitably, right? Like you live enough life, and there's going to
Right.
be at some point something that's going to be challenging. And to have these things in place will at least be almost like a foundation of sorts to be able to work through or to get on the other side of it. And it's so important to have certain things in place. At least that's my feeling anyway. Just so that there is already something in place, as opposed to finding yourself in a situation of distress or crisis, and then to have to figure it out from there.
Yeah, exactly. Because when you're in that crisis, you're not thinking straight. You don't have clear thought patterns. And when you're depressed, your mind is often it slows your thinking process. Like you're not even able to process a thought. So how are you going to figure out what to do unless you already know what to do because you've already, kind of prepared for it. So I'm real big on that because, I've watched friends just, their parents die at like 85 or 90 and they just spiral because they've really never had any experience with any kind of depression. So I've been big on preparing. So, and those are situations, most of us, if we have parents, they will die before us, most likely, right? So just to be prepared for those crises that we might have in life or probably will have in life will help you get through them when they come, is what I think. And then this is a unforeseen circumstance. Whoever would have thought we'd all be staying at home like this. But now's a good time to make a plan so you have it and know what helps you, and helps your family.
So for you to have had this way of having preparations, and for you to be engaging and practicing self-care for as long as you have, what are maybe some things that you have noticed that you've been leaning into since all this has been happening?
I really have tried to maintain my walks. We're still allowed to go out for walks here. So I've been walking at least 5 times a week. And I've been making sure the first couple of days I was not eating that great. It was more like I felt I was treating it like a blizzard. I know I live in Orlando, but I'm from Philadelphia, and I went to school in the Pocono Mountains. So I've had many of blizzards over the years. So I was kind of treating it more like that, like, oh, I'll drink some hot chocolate. Oh, let me make some cookies. Oh, I'm going to bake banana bread. And I was starting to feel it. And that's when I'm like, okay, I got to get back to eating right. So I've been really leaning on my nutrition and my exercise because what I have found over the years, those are my two main areas that I can really control and that really do affect my mental health. So that's where I've been really focusing on for the most part, those two areas.
And those are the two things that I think any of us can really look at, because it can sometimes be like we were talking about sitting earlier. Like it could feel really tough if you've been sitting the entire day to go, okay, I'm going to go for a walk. But it is a choice that we can all make. Again, like movement is something that we can make a choice to do. And the thing about food is like we have to eat. And there are choices that we're making on a daily basis around like what we're eating. And sure, many of us may, and I'm certainly one of them, like lean into comfort eating. Absolutely. And it is tough when I'm thinking about like ways in which I'm like, oh, like I think if I eat this, like that'll feel good.
Right.
But a lot of those things are very sugar and kind of high fat kind of related things, but we can make the decisions. And sometimes it can feel hard because we're in a hard situation to make maybe better decisions for ourselves nutritionally and with exercise. But those are the two things that we all can be doing.
Yeah, and if you can't get outside because it's raining or it's cold or wherever you live is miserable, I mean, there's so much you can, if you have the internet, which chances are most people have it now, but you can get so many exercise videos on the internet too. So you don't even really have to leave your house. That's what I'm saying. Like we really just have to keep our minds and bodies healthy during this time because it is overwhelming and it changes every day. And we think we're getting somewhere and then something else happens. So it can be a little upsetting for those of us who like routine.
For sure. As we cap off today, Debbie, is there something that you would like maybe like for people to know about depression and what could be happening at this time?
I think people need to know that I think people need to understand depression is not something people can just snap out of. I think there's still that mentality from a lot of people. It's different than being sad. And if a loved one of yours or if you yourself just start seeing yourself withdrawing more and more or not feeling like getting out of bed, then we need to be there for each other. And we have to pull together as a community now, I think, and really help each other and check in on our neighbors through phone numbers or whatever, but make sure everybody around us is doing okay. We're going to get through this. We will. But just lean on each other and make sure you take care of yourselves during this time. You know, you want to have that plate of nachos or that plate of cookies on a Friday night, then that's fine, but do it in moderation, not every day, you know?
Yeah, for sure. Debbie, thank you so much again for hopping back on with me. And I feel like, you know, what we talked about today is really valuable, especially considering what's going on. What would be the best ways for people to learn more about you and your work?
Probably they could go to my website, which is www.endingstigmatogether.com. They can get that survival guide template there. They can download that and create their own for there, and then they can read some of my articles and my emails on there. In different ways they can get in touch with me through that. So, and they can sign up for my email list too, and I'll get connected with them there too.
And Debbie also has a great book called The Depression Survival Guide that's available on Amazon in North America anyway. Is it
And there's a link to my book on my website under the book pages. That's where you would find the survival guide template, and then the link to the book to Amazon too. And it is Amazon, I think, in all the English-speaking countries anyway. It's not translated into any other languages.
Okay, great. Thank you so much, Debbie.
Thank you so much.
Debbie is such a wealth of information, and please do make sure to check out her blog and the resources she provides at endingstigmatogether.com, and her book, The Depression Survival Guide, can be found on Amazon. To learn more about Debbie and her work, her links are included in the show notes. And before I sign off for today, I wanted to mention that I was also recently invited to be on Jeremy Klein's podcast called Change Work Life, where we talked about how and why I transitioned into this work as a psychotherapist, as well as some suggestions and tools which might be helpful to develop self-reflection. I'm featured in episode 31 of Change Work Life if you're interested in checking it out. And lastly, if having self-care prompts can be helpful for you at this time to help support you and your mental health, please do head on over to lifestuff101.com/challenge to get started on getting those self-care prompts. And they will be released on Mondays, Wednesdays, and Fridays during this time of the COVID-19 crisis. Thank you so much for joining me today. Until next time, please stay safe and in good health wherever you are in the world. And I'll be speaking with you again, either on the next full episode of Life Stuff 101 or in one of the Challenging Times Self-Care Challenge episodes real soon.
Thank you for listening to today's episode of Life Stuff 101. If you haven't already, please subscribe so that you'll be among the first to be notified when new episodes are released. Always be sure to check out lifestuff101.com for show notes and to be a member of Mio's Miracle Mob. Because as the wise modern-day philosopher John Bon Jovi once said, miracles happen every day. Change your perception of what a miracle is, and you'll see them all around you.